Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Clarity in the Chaos as we attempt to bring some vertical clarity into the midst of our horizontal chaos. The book of Proverbs is written from a father to a son to a young man to help him be exactly what the book of Proverbs describes as a wise man, one who will listen and learn, and one who will have the fear of the Lord as the beginning of all things in his life. This is what leads to wisdom and to knowledge and to understanding. So throughout the book, the writer gives us some pictures of people that we will encounter along the way. And this father writes to a young son to say, you're going to experience these kind of people in your life and learn some lessons from them. One of them that he points out is, he says, you're going to find some people who are stubborn people. They are more interested in telling what they know than learning what others know. They're more interested in spouting their opinion than learning and changing. In fact, they rarely change. They are fixed. They are stubborn. They don't want to change. They are filled with some hurt and some anger. They're more interested in proving themselves than learning themselves. He said these are people who are scorners. They scorn life. They are angry. They are bitter. They are blaming others. And they are selfish. And they refuse to change. They have to go through pain. And often then, they still do not change. They keep going down the same path time after time. And they refuse to learn the lessons of life, of wisdom, and from God. There's a second group, he said, you'll meet along the way. They're young and they're naive. They might not be young in physical age, but they are young in their maturity. And so they go through life really kind of ignorant of life. And they don't listen to learn either. They're capable of it because they haven't reached the point of being resistant and rebellious. They're just very naive about life. And so they have to see other people go through pain before they realize, oh, I should probably avoid that path. They are what the book of Proverbs calls the simple. They have a very simple framework of thinking. If it doesn't affect me, then it doesn't bother me. So they don't always learn the lessons of life until they get in the midst of a group who has to go through pain and suffering. Usually then, they'll at least see and possibly change. And so Solomon, as he writes Proverbs, tells his son, neither of those is the best position to be in. The best is a third category, which he calls the learner or the one who has understanding. This is the one who goes through life, and they don't have to walk through pain to go through change. They don't have to see someone else go through pain to change. They hear instruction and avoid the pain altogether. This is a different category. This is the person who's wise and chooses to hear from others who've walked down the road and to hear from God, even more importantly. So a couple of verses from Proverbs 19 help us see this picture of these three people and help us become the kind of person that God calls us to be, one who will listen and learn, submit, and change without having to prove ourselves first, without having to experience the pain and the painful lessons first, but simply hearing, we walk in truth. So verse 25, we'll start with today in Proverbs 19. It says, strike a scoffer or a scorner, and the simple will become wary. In other words, the simple, they all of a sudden get their attention whenever they see someone else having to pay the price for their foolishness, for their rebellion, for their ignorance. Strike a scoffer, in other words, when they go through their consequences of their pain, the simple will become wary. All of a sudden, they'll perk up and want to listen. But he says, rebuke one who has understanding, and he will discern knowledge. For the one who has understanding, all they have to do is hear a word of correction. All they have to do is hear instruction, and they gain knowledge. And this is a category we want to be in. This is a category that puts us in a place of one who has understanding, and we simply hear. We hear a word of correction. We hear a word of instruction, and we go in the right path without being resistant, without being stubborn, without saying, well, I'm going to do it anyway, or let me try it and see what happens. We simply hear and we obey. This is a category that God wants us to be in. Verse 20 of that same chapter helps us with this. It says, listen to counsel and receive instruction that you may be wise in your latter days. Just listening to counsel and receiving instruction makes us wise if we'll act on that. And this puts us in a category of saying, okay, God, I'm ready to listen, and I don't have to experiment with all that's out there. I simply hear what you say to me, and I'll walk in that path. I don't have to prove myself. I don't have to see what happens if I don't walk in your ways. I simply choose to hear and obey. And this is what we know of as faith in the Bible. Faith hears and accepts as truth with confidence what God has said. In this day, God is speaking. He is speaking across the world today. He is speaking to the church today. He is speaking to individuals today. And he has something to say to you, to me. And it's important that we have ears to hear, to be wise, to not have to walk through pain like others do, to not have to walk through resistance and rebellion and all the consequences that come with that, but to be one who says, God, I will hear, I will listen, and I will listen to obey. I'm not going to listen to see if I want to. I'll listen with the purpose of receiving instruction. I'll receive what you have to say to me, and I'll walk in that. If you and I will do that in this day, as the world panics at a pandemic, as the world is in crisis over a virus, if you and I will listen carefully, God is speaking. He has something to say to us. Let us be wise and hear what he says, for then we will have clarity in the midst of our chaos.